Guys, okay, listen. The H3 podcast, they're up to no good once again. They're doing more of that stuff that we've seen. Hila Klein, co-host of the H3 podcast, wife to friend of the show, Ethan Klein.
It's not a threat. I'm going to sue you.
She's posted on Instagram stories praising the IDF. Yep. Hila Klein, to her 775,000 followers, reposted an image from an Israeli propaganda account that shows a female Israeli Air Force pilot. Hila adds the caption, "Female pilot who participated in the attack in Iran. Israeli women are heroes." This post is, for a variety of reasons, absolutely batshit insane. Israel, as many of you surely know, is committing a genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza. There's no real debate on what's happening there. It's a genocide. The United Nations, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Israeli human rights groups like B'Tselem, 15 out of 17 of the judges at the International Court of Justice, they ruled that Israel is committing a plausible case of genocide. That was over a year and a half ago, and Israel has only escalated its mass killing, starvation, and destruction. There's lots of ways that this is facilitated, violent mass slaughter, deliberate civilian targeting. Israel's killed tens, probably hundreds of thousands of Palestinian people, including tens of thousands of children. It consists of the use of starvation as a weapon of war. Gaza is a concentration camp with Israel controlling everything that comes in and out. And they are currently using that control to completely block any humanitarian aid from entering the strip. Starvation and disease are widespread. Children, babies, starving to death. They're also not letting medical supplies, things like medication and anesthesia. So thousands of children are undergoing amputations with no anesthetic. Now, one of the primary tools of this genocidal arsenal is Israel's Air Force. The aerial bombings are what have made Gaza look like this. All of the schools, hospitals, mosques, water treatment plants, everything meant to provide the basic necessities for life in Gaza, including housing itself. Over 90% of the residential buildings have been completely destroyed. That's the Air Force. That's Hila's heroes. Now, admittedly, the pilot in this image wasn't killing civilians in Gaza, at least not on this particular mission. She was killing or participating in the killing of civilians in Iran. Israel recently started a war with Iran in an unprovoked act of aggression on false pretenses that Iran was on the verge of developing nuclear weapons. This is a claim that's been made by Israel and many Western countries for decades, as we'll look at. But for now, the point is that this wasn't some cool, heroic mission that this pilot was on. It was an unjustified escalation and unprovoked act of violence against a country of 90 million people. Hila got some backlash for this post, understandably, praising the warmongering genocide army will do that. So she made a follow-up story doing what she claims is apologizing for what she said. She wrote, "I would like to apologize for my recent story reshare about the female Israeli pilot being a hero. It came off as glorifying violence, which wasn't my intention. I understand that's how it came off. I wanted to highlight the difference between women's lack of rights under the Ayatollah and women in Israel being given agency to even fight in combat. That being said, it's not the best timing or situation to make such a point. War is terrible and should never be glorified, and I'm very sorry for the post." Despite Hila's use of the word, this isn't an apology, it's a justification. Even though I didn't mention it at all or even allude to it, this post was actually about feminism. It was about women's rights in Iran and how I care about them, which is why I support them being bombed, apparently. If that is what she meant by her post and just completely failed to communicate it, it's not like that's any better, right? That's just girlboss imperialism. When Israeli women participate in Israel's violent lunacy all across the Middle East, bombing Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and now Iran, they're actually doing feminism. This image comes to mind. I'm sure you've seen it. It's pretty much exactly like this image. This is Parnia Abbasi. She was a 23-year-old artist from Tehran. Israel killed her in these attacks, possibly the very attack that this girl pilot participated in. Is that feminism? Was the idea of liberating this young woman from the clutches of the Ayatollah? No, of course not. That's insane. But according to Hila Klein, they kind of were. There's nothing in her apology that indicates otherwise. Vague condemnations of violence and war while praising the aggressors is not an apology. It's lip service. Hila's use of the word agency is interesting here too, I think, for a few reasons. If this is what agency is, the right to participate in unprovoked acts of aggression and also genocide, then yes, that agency should be revoked, not just from the women, but from everyone, because genocide and unprovoked military aggressions that kill civilians tend to infringe upon the agency of others by killing them, and their families and destroying their lives. So if Iranian women do not have the agency to do that, then that is a good thing, because no one should. Calling it agency is also interesting when we consider that, Hila served in the IDF. The IDF, according to her own husband, is a terrorist organization.
So you think the IDF is a terror organization?
I said yes.
And so naturally, there has to be some excuse for her time in this service. And the excuse they use that is often repeated is that Israel has mandatory conscription.
Hila was doing mandatory military service. What should she have done?
Hila had no other choice. It was the law. She was just following orders. She had no agency, let's say. Now, this isn't exactly true, right? Because you can dodge service in the IDF with things like conscientious objection or medical exemption. The latter is what Ethan did or tried to do, apparently. And the former, well, nobody in Israel really does that aside from like 10 people because most of them support the genocide. But you can do it, right? Now, Hila didn't, but even still, she did have some agency in the IDF. According to her, when she got bored of her desk job, she requested a transfer and ended up participating in at least one IDF raid on the illegally occupied West Bank in Ramallah, which they refer to as a terrorist city.
At first, I was given a role that was like in an office somewhat close to my house in Tel Aviv. And it was super boring and I really hated it. So I tried to change my role. I somehow ended up in a better place that I liked a lot more. It was kind of like just more of an adventure, more of a different experience that I preferred than to just go to a boring job.
You told me once you went on like a mission with them to like a terrorist city.
Yeah.
That was kind of a crazy story.
Yeah, my officers and like the soldiers in that brigade, they would go every night on a raid in Ramallah to arrest terrorists. So one time I wanted to go with them just to experience it.
Why? You just were all of a sudden had an urge to go with them?
I just wanted to see what it's like.
Right.
I wanted to see it. They took me with them one night, even though they weren't supposed to.
Did they arrest anyone that night?
They did.
Did they bring it in the same car with you?
No.
Oh,
You
different
go,
car.
there's a few cars going.
Damn, that's crazy.
The specifics of this crime have been left vague, but if it was anything like what these raids usually entail, Hila is probably a war criminal. I mean, the West Bank is illegally occupied land, and raids like this are in violation of international law inherently. So that's agency, right? But agency for what? Well, helping kidnap Palestinians from their homes in illegally occupied land. This is just liberal feminist language being weaponized for imperial aims. It's kind of like the argument that, Israel is a bastion of progressivism and gay rights. Hamas throws gay people off of roofs. Why do leftists support them? This is just a moral justification, and a very racist one at that, for liberating queer Palestinians from Hamas by killing them. There's a more subtle thing going on in these posts that I also want to talk about that relates to the broader media ecosystem on the issue of Israel's attacks on Iran. Manufacturing consent, we had to bring it up. Shout out, my boy. Notice the language in Hila's post. She refers to Israel's strikes sort of vaguely as violence that's an aspect of war. This language is representative of a wider phenomenon in Western media, which is just normalizing Israel's crimes. Hila calls it violence, but it's not just violence, right? It's an unprovoked act of aggression from a genocidal state. It's not just war that's happening. Whatever Iran is doing now with its weaponry is responsive. It is in retaliation for Israel's unprovoked attacks. Israel's act of aggression was once again being framed as a defensive act of war. That's what Hila's doing in this post, and that's what a lot of people did in the Western news media, as well as most Western governments, including obviously hundreds of American politicians. One way that helps me compare this sort of media coverage is with Ground News, the sponsor of today's video. Ground News is a website that allows you to compare coverage of stories from different media outlets. You can sort the stories by the political leanings of the outlets and apply filters for things like factuality ratings and ownership information. If we filter this story by political perspective, center and right-leaning outlets were more likely to frame the strikes as being preemptive, signaling a sort of moral pretext for the attack, implying the existence of an imminent threat from Iran. Headlines from this perspective also often cited Israel's stated military objectives, leaving out the effect that these attacks had on Iranian civilians. Left-leaning outlets were more likely to call Israel's strikes escalatory and focus on the humanitarian consequences, with references to civilian casualties. Some also cautioned the negative effect the attacks had on ongoing diplomacy. Thanks to Ground News for the help on that. Go to ground.news/Noah for access to all of these tools and to stay fully informed. Save 40% off through my link for unlimited access to the Vantage plan. All right, so back to Hila's post. So even her last statement that war is terrible and shouldn't be glorified, that's not necessarily true, right? Like, no one has a problem glorifying the people who fought the Nazis. The issue is when you start glorifying the Nazis, and that's what this post is doing. Israel is Nazi Germany, and the IDF are the Nazi soldiers. That's the comparison you get to make when you commit genocides on ethnic supremacist, expansionist, and colonial grounds, because that was the Nazis' whole thing, right? Despite the mountains of evidence to the contrary, Western media outlets still overwhelmingly refer to Israel's genocide as a war against Hamas. But it's not a war, and it's not against Hamas, obviously. It is an extermination against the Palestinian people of Gaza. And calling it a war, using that word, is one method of obfuscating that reality. Depending on the person doing it, it happens for different reasons, to be sure. Some people do it because that's their job. They have been and continue to be mouthpieces for the Western imperial agenda. Others do it because they have fallen victim to this sort of propaganda. It seems pretty hard to argue that that makes up a majority of people now, that people are just unaware and brainwashed given the 2 straight years of live-streamed genocide that we've all seen on our phones. But I also think that we do sometimes underestimate just how little of this coverage makes it to the average Westerner, and just how strong the media apparatus manufacturing consent for it is. But others still do this manufacturing consent because they fundamentally believe that what Israel is doing is just. And that's what Hila thinks, you know, given her non-apology here for calling the genocidal military heroic, and her repeated examples of running cover for the IDF, saying they don't target children.
You're excusing people being burned alive and kids being murdered. You're saying Israel does that on the daily. Now, I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. So are you in favor?
Saying they don't target journalists.
I can't get any security assurances against Israel, obviously.
Well, bro, it's not like Israel
that is worried.
Look, it's not like Israel's going to do a precision strike on Hassan. They don't fucking.
Yeah,
but it is dangerous. It's a war zone. Like, I agree, it's dangerous.
Sure, it's a war zone. I don't think you guys understand Israel. It doesn't work like that.
They're not. It's not. But regardless, I agree it's dangerous, right?
Yeah.
It's dangerous in a war zone,
right?
Not because Israel will like target him.
Calling one of the primary architects of the genocide a good guy, and then issuing another similar non-apology for that. We'll get into that in a moment.
Just the other day, Bibi fired a really good guy that a lot of people are pissed about, and he fired him because they had a disagreement.
Whatever the cause of this may be, though, the effect is the same, which is that people are being sold a moral justification for an ongoing genocide, and many of them are buying it. Israel is the aggressor. You know, in the case of these strikes especially, Hila's language falls in line with the broader Western political and media consensus. Israel's strikes are being justified as a preemptive act of self-defense against the existential threat of Iran acquiring WMDs, weapons of mass destruction. And we've heard all of this before. This was the pretext that the US government fabricated for the invasion of Iraq, in which the US military ended up killing hundreds of thousands of people. We now, for the most part, look back on the Iraq War as a mistake, for varying reasons, of course. You know, many in the US cite the loss of, American soldiers. Sometimes that's the only thing they cite, and not the hundreds of thousands of civilians, some estimates upward of 1 million. But the same attitudes and justifications that were used then are being used right now for Israel's attacks on Iran, which were undertaken, of course, with US support.
Whatever you think about Israel, Iran is bad or worse. They are the fucking evil. They are the evil fucking. They are the reason for all this bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, they're all attacking under the direction of Iran. They are all being these jihadists, fucking Islamists, like mega, like these ultra, I don't even know how to say it, militant, super religious zealots, right? This is all coming from Iran. Under their direction.
Iran is evil. They are terrorist jihadists. They are Islamic-style bad guys. These people would have cheered on the Iraq War, no question, just as they've run cover for Israel during the past 2 years of genocide. And in both cases, they will act as if they didn't do that, but they did. We've also been hearing the same thing about Iran for decades, both Israel and the United States.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb. Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade. Ladies and gentlemen,
time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
The non-apology in this second post reminds me of that time that Gila Klein non-apologized for referring to Yoav Gallant as a good guy, Yoav Gallant being Israel's former Minister of Defense and one of the primary architects of Israel's genocide.
Just the other day, Bibi fired a really good guy that a lot of people are pissed about, and he fired him because they had a disagreement, and that's like so Trump coded.
Well, he was like a moderating voice in the war room.
Yeah.
Whenever this instance gets brought up, Ethan and Gila claim that she apologized for this, but that's not true. This is what she actually said.
I feel like the reason I brought it up was mainly to express the frustration with Bibi and him firing the one guy that was somewhat, attempting at moderation. It wasn't really so much to say Gallant is a good guy. I shouldn't have used that word. That was a bad choice on my part, considering stuff that he has said that I was not even thinking of. That was not a good choice of words, and I would not have said that again.
So I shouldn't have used that word is not an apology, it's lip service. There's no way to spin Yoav Gallant as being a moderating voice when he quite literally did the genocide. You can't paint him in any sort of contrast to Netanyahu when the two of them were holding hands together as they slaughtered tens of thousands of innocent people. The articles that they cited to prove this point do not show him to be some kind of anti-war figure. They show him to be declaring their genocide a victory. It was never, we've gone too far, it was mission accomplished. And the protests around that time had nothing to do with ending the war, they had everything to do with bringing the hostages back. What happens after that, Israelis couldn't give less of a fuck about. As poll after poll has shown, they either do not care about or openly support the genocide and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. So unless such an apology comes with, I was wrong, Yoav Gallant is not a moderating voice, he literally did the genocide, then once again, it's just lip service. There's an organization called Breaking the Silence that's IDF veterans that whistleblow and provide details about their time in service. This organization has produced some pretty harrowing stuff. I mean, obviously, it's the Israeli military we're talking about. I'd rather have my house destroyed than see it in the state we're leaving it in. There were children in almost all the houses we were in. We knew it for sure because you could see children's clothes. It bothered me because they drew really sexual things, nudity, and it felt messed up to me. You get the area and clear it. We finish a place and a few days later we're in the next place. It started with the houses that overlooked the border. In the end, the neighborhood was no longer standing. We essentially created a sterile strip where once there used to be fields, groves, all kinds of things, nothing, sterile. I got the impression that every house we passed on our way got hit by a shell, and houses farther away too. It was methodical. There was no threat. It's called retaining tension, that is, keeping Hamas unsure about when exactly we will be going in so that they are constantly thinking that we might be about to go in. It's called softening targets, and it's done also to clear a range for advancing. What this means in practice is that shells are being fired all the time. Details like this provide quite a bit of insight, into what's actually happening there. If you're someone that's been following the footage of like every hour when an apartment building is blown up and thinking to yourself, what could ever possibly be the justification for that? Well, it's because stuff like this. Bombing for the sake of bombing. Killing people for the sake of killing people. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, according to the H3 Wikipedia, Gila Klein served in the IDF around 2005 in the Duchefat Battalion. That's where she was transferred when she participated in the illegal raid. I found a testimony on Breaking the Silence from that very same battalion and in that same time frame and the same area of Ramallah. Sometimes there were detained Palestinians waiting at our post. One of the detainees was cuffed with a zip tie and blindfolded. This was at a moment that there were no commanders at the post, so one soldier decided to go inside and beat him up. Just like that. The person walked in, shut the door behind him. Yes, there was almost nobody outside. At some stage, he gave up. I don't know, he didn't beat him up for too long, but let's say that if I had said to him, why are you beating him up? What are you doing? He would have continued hitting him. It was better to just shut up and wait for him to finish, and that's it. Gila Klein has never publicly revealed any of the specific details about her time helping illegally raid and illegally kidnap a Palestinian man in the illegally occupied West Bank, but she should, because this is the sort of thing that her her terrorist organization was and still are getting up to. If she truly is sorry for glorifying the IDF, as she claims in her post, then she should help the world by telling the truth about what she saw and did when she was a part of this, beyond the vague details she's already provided. She won't do that, of course, because she doesn't regret her time there and does believe that this genocidal army is heroic and has consistently denied their role in the intentional mass slaughter of Palestinians, journalists, and so on. But someday she may try to pretend that she doesn't. So feel free to refer back to this series of clips when that happens. Hashtag Gila break the silence. Let's get that viral trending. Israel's actions against Iran have been taking up quite a bit of media coverage and turning what little attention remained on Gaza away from it and on to, the sirens in Israel. This was certainly a part of the calculus for what Israel is now doing in Gaza, in some ways the most horrific acts of depravity we've seen yet. I'm talking about the death trap massacres.
What to fear more, bullets or hunger? Under fire yet again, crowds of desperate Palestinians waiting in the hope of collecting food from the new Israeli-backed aid scheme. 20 people were killed here in southern Gaza by Israeli soldiers today, according to local officials. Others managed to grab something to take home to their families. Hundreds of people are now said to have been gunned down in repeated incidents around the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites in the few weeks they've been operating.
These massacres are being facilitated by the IDF and the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is an organization devised by Israel and backed by the US and denounced by every long-standing humanitarian aid organization that has operated in Gaza, who are all still being completely barred from entry. This organization, with Israeli and US help, is facilitating the use of starvation as a weapon of war. They're setting up so-called aid distribution centers in strategic military positions in the south to drive large crowds of starving Palestinians into cages for bags of flour that are a tiny fraction of what is actually needed to keep Palestinians in Gaza from starving to death, and they are then opening fire on them with guns, drones, and tank shelling. The footage from these massacres is some of the craziest shit I have ever seen. They're just straight up doing a death camp live on 4K video. There's so much footage of starving Palestinian people running for their lives to escape Israeli fire after running for their lives for a tiny shred of hope that they'll be able to get some flour so they don't starve to death, flour that Israel is barring them from getting any other way. Israel has killed countless people, including many children. 50 people were killed yesterday. Dozens are being killed every single day.
كان كويس معي كتير بده يجيب مساعدات كنا بدنا ناكل فيش عنا ولا حاجة له راح له متصاب جبناه على المستشفى استشهد اليوم العالم لو خالي قال له يلا يا خال لهو رفع راسه اجى طلق له وارتمى على الارض.
The pretext for these massacres is, you guessed it, it's Hamas, a claim which you probably also guessed is meritless. Netanyahu recently just admitted to backing the ISIS-linked criminal gangs in Gaza that have repeatedly looted aid operations under the protection of the IDF. This has been reported for well over a year now, but Netanyahu just straight up admitted to it a few weeks ago. This didn't stop Ethan Klein from quoting the organization that's facilitating these massacres to, attack a streamer that he doesn't like. Yes, he actually shared this post. It's direct propaganda from the genocidal state, and it's death trap massacre committing orchestration. Stalwart ally to the Palestinian cause, by the way. Israel's backing of these groups has been dubbed Operation Total Madness, as what we are seeing now is the final stage of Israel's final solution to the Gaza problem. Drive everyone out of Gaza and kill anyone that's left. So the reason people are making memes and jokes about World War III and not talking about this, one of the greatest crimes of our age that's being broadcast on social media every single day, is because that's exactly what Israel and the United States want us to be doing. So stop. Okay, so anyways, that's it for the video today. Just a short one. Real quick, a question some of you might have right now is, why are we still talking about these people? Can we be done? And I get it, and I partially agree, but also, I didn't realize it. This podcast is like a very highly ranked in terms of viewership podcast. I think at one point it was a top 100 podcast. So when they spread propaganda like this, just openly glorifying a genocidal nation during its genocidal assault on Palestinian people in Gaza, that makes them one of the largest mouthpieces for this genocide propaganda, like on the internet. And on Instagram too, where where this post came from, where they do much of this sort of propaganda and also just general run-of-the-mill Zionist whining. Ethan and Gila have a collective millions of followers, hundreds of times my own reach on there. So I think that alone is a good enough reason to keep covering what they say, especially when it's this blatant. Like, come on, you're gonna try and say you're a Palestinian advocate while glorifying the IDF? Like, they just can't help themselves. It's crazy. But I do think it's best to do that in context of the broader issues. So when they post glorifying the IDF, we simply use that to get the news out about what the IDF is doing currently in Iran and in Gaza. When they deny Israeli apartheid, we simply use that to talk about Israeli apartheid. When they deny Israel's killing of journalists, we can talk about that. Or when they call Yoav Gallant a good guy, we use that to talk about Yoav Gallant and how defending a genocidal war criminal doesn't just get canceled out by saying that you're not doing that. So keep posting about him. Make a video about this post. Add your own commentary about what you think is important politically about what's happening right now. You'll get views. Call it grifting all you want. More views means more people learn about the genocide and are then equipped with the information and arguments to teach other people about it. So yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching. Join my Patreon if you want to support the show, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye bye.